we have to continue to do our practice without rest. And we call that the practice here refers as we proceed our way to something that is we go to a place which is right, or we strive towards a righteous place. And this refers to we also call that as Viriya, which is also Viriya Paramita. Well, we also use the term the rice, which we generally use. And here, when we wash our rice, and you have the starch, and sometimes you can see the very clear color once you boil it. And when that was turned into the Chinese letter, it became Zhong, which also is practice. And comparing to that, that's how this letter began. And then here, Chongjin, which is also called as Viriya or practice in Buddhism. And the meaning behind it is we strive towards a place where we, and just like rice wiping, our power to practice, or our the discipline, or even our endeavor practice gets better, in the sense that our mind changes to something that's better. If we don't do our practice, then we also stay at the stagnant moment. There's no stagnant moment, but it is actually a step back, because agony doesn't arise in the same pattern to the same place. It has its own variables, and so if you put brake at the highway, then sometimes the tires will screech, and if you try to reduce speed even further more, it's also possible that it could also cause accident. So with repeated repetition, I need to change, and it refers to that. But without change, if you just go to temples or monasteries, it doesn't have any meanings. Even if you are wearing the monk's robe, it is just something that's out in the outer skin, but it doesn't do anything. And also, even if we say you go to monastery for 20 to 30 years, but if your heart doesn't change for something better, and if your heart doesn't get rid of its own greediness, then there is no point of going to a monastery at all. You should not go to monastery. It's better not to go to monasteries. It's only that you're accumulating your own sin. Without me changing, why would you go to monasteries? And while going to monasteries, you commit many other evil sins. And do not misunderstand, or do not think yourself that it's okay to commit other sins because you have come to monastery and had your repentance. So when we actually do our own practice, or when we put our efforts to do better, you have to realize that even if it is 0.1%, you have actually become a better person. Do not pretend that you have learned everything in letters, and so you know it literally, or as an education. Do not try to have that, or do not understand. That's okay. If you understand, that's more than enough. Amongst the things that I say, if you just understand the wordings, well, of course, if you don't understand what I am referring here, then you will need your own practice. But what's important is your mind or how you're going to change with the sayings that I have taught you. But without you changing, if you just come and listen, and if you feel that if when you came and listened it was a good thing, then there is no conclusion to it. And also, human beings are very selfish, and we are also very evil, and so it also causes the situation that we only hear the things that befits our karma. Even if I talk for an hour, you only listen to those which befits your karma, but the rest of the things that I say, you just feel that you are listening. I felt that deeply because they were reading faces, and the person who was doing the superstitious ritual, she said, she was talking about the protecting gods, and she said when she looked at the Avatamsaka Sutra, she saw so many different gods, and she had all the names of the gods in memory, and that's the only thing that she has seen. So now, when you do your practice, you need dharma, and with the dharma, you need a teacher who would be encouraging you to study. If you're just reading and if you're just understanding, that's just merely understanding and studying. But because the form of the karma is so strong, you tend to compromise yourself, so that you feel even paralyzed about yourself. So while doing this and that, at some point of time, you need to have the thought that you need to have the resolution, or you need to be encouraged that you want to study and you want to do something else. But that it doesn't make any sense if you just realize that, well, it's Tuesday, I should go to a teaching. It will be just like a vicious circle which keeps repeating. So it's same for Buddha, and here the worst thing in Buddhism is, or in religion is, just like the singer, the Soteju and his voice, they tend to assume that they're very talented, and they try to cheat. And what's their special ability? Are they going to make bread out of stone? They cannot do that. Even if they're making bread out of stone, what's the holy thing behind it when we have so much weed around? So sometimes I feel the whole churches in Korea, they're going to go for their ruin, and in order for churches to succeed, all the hospitals in Korea should go into bankruptcy, because they can cure everything. And also, we pay a lot of money for our medical insurance. That's also so the way that they do is kind of cheating. And also, a lot of Buddhist monks, they follow the Christian's path. Like if you do 100 days of prayer, then even a grandfather of 8 years can have a baby. And because of that, they are cheated and they pray for 100 days. And the way that they do is just like the Christianity. You should imitate things which are good, not everything. And doing something like that, it is not proper. It is not as per our Dharma. And what is Dharma here? There are only two things which can make you happy. The first one, in this lay world, and when we say you're lucky in this labor, so if you don't want to be poor, then you should not be stingy. You should not. You should donate more. If you don't want to die sooner, then don't kill others. If you don't want to die sooner, then don't kill others. Isn't it? If you don't want to become a crazy person, then don't drink. Because you'll be crazy even in your next life. The virtues in this commonwealth comes that way. If you're healthy, if you want to be healthy, if you don't want to die sooner, don't commit murder. If you don't want to be poor, then don't steal others. You are going to meet them in your next life, so you need to share with others, then only they will also help you. You will not become rich only if you are the only person who is doing good. And even if you do that in this commonwealth, well, that's even a virtue of half its value. But there are also people who doesn't even have the half the virtue, and so they suffer a lot. So when they want to do something, then they age. When they want to do something, they don't have money. When they want to do something, they fall sick, and then they also say, "Oh, I came to know only now. I want to contribute, but then when I want to contribute, I don't have money." What have you done so far? When you had money, you were out of your mind, and you were not able to do anything good. It's okay, even if it's being broadcasted. Maybe people who are watching this could be laughing at this point of time. So the virtues in the commonwealth, you need to have them at least even like that. So if you want to live a happy life in the commonwealth, if you know that there is samsara and that we come back to this world, and that there is also karma, then if you want to live a good life tomorrow, then you also have to do well today. If you feel that there is no tomorrow, and if you eat all the rice, and if you use all the charcoal to heat, then tomorrow you'll be hungry, and also you'll be suffering from coldness. We don't know how to foresee our future and such virtues. And even if you're happy in our commonwealth, if you ask if we don't have any acne, that's not so. Although we are eating well, and although we are living a happy life, they suffer and they die sooner because of high blood pressure. So even if things go well, that's also the virtue of half its value. And there are also some people who are even worse than that. But even if it's a half moon, if you have the virtues of the commonwealth, you can survive. But it is not enough. In Buddhism, in ultimate truthness, in trueness, we do not say the good fortunes in the commonwealth. It is not like a virtue. They just see it just like they only see it as a bridge which helps you cross the water or cross the river. Well, it never occurred to me that I am jealous of the person who became a president. Well, sometimes I think sometimes I think that if they could donate money, I could use it to a good place. But if they don't give us, well, it's their money. Then what can we say about it? We cannot do anything. It's their money. And even if I'm doing good virtue for him, they would not know that I'm doing something good for them, but they would think that we are taking their money from them. And those things we don't even call as virtue. You understand? Then what is the good fortune? what is a good fortune in when you become a monk or when you follow the monastic order. Although nirvana and happiness is all the same. When you say nirvana, it means it is a pure, it is negative. So, and vana also means it's windy. So it means the wind has stopped. So what is pain and affliction? When you talk to common people, they are not able to understand it, but they say many things. But in a simple word, it is just the greediness. And when there is greediness, you tend to assume that we exist, but it is not so. And just like that, you have your obsession and you feel greedy and you believe that you need something for yours to survive. Well, when you are alive, you do exist, but it is also not eternal. You also live them out and you die at some point of time. Look at the Lotte family. The father has been kicked out of his place because he aged, but he didn't give any. He didn't give them their property. So even in North Korea, Kim Jong-il, because he believed that people are doing the good and people are living a good life, but he realized that there are some people who are actually starving and dying. And if he only came to know about the position at the time, he would have lost his regime at the time. But then, and in order to protect his regime, he made his father so angry that he almost died. He died out of his own anger. In olden times, the Taejong and Sejong, they also had an argument because they are so similar, and Taejong also wanted to almost like kill his son. So when he was coming back from Hamhung, he hid something that's rounded and there are also nails on it, like an iron mace. He had it in his pocket. And also Lee Sung-jae is very good at shooting at archery. And well, because in olden times the medicine was not so good, and Lee Sung-jae was very good at archery, so the son's wife told him to wear his own armor when you go, and on his path he saw the Taejong was sending Taejong was sending. There was a big like welcome sign, and he was standing beside it. And when he came, but he was wearing the armor, so he didn't get hurt. And the second attempt to kill him, it was like a welcome dinner, and he tried to kill him with the iron mace. And because Muhak was also trying to control the situation, he was not able to kill. And the virtues or virtues in this commonwealth, if you have obsession, you kill your son, you kill your father. There's also not even the need to even go that far. sometimes if at times if you become old, when you have aged and when you have money, then you could also be beaten by your children. You might think that my children would not do so, but that's your misunderstanding. The children of your own bearing are your greatest enemy. So have only as much as so remain only the things which are enough for your survival, and before make sure that use a lawyer and use a lawyer to control them, and don't try to control your children with money because you could be beaten to death. That's the fortune in this commonwealth. Well, if the mind, the mind is different from yesterday and today, and it also is important how has it changed to the positive aspect. It's also very funny. We ask you to repent those wrong things, but instead you're praying for the good result in the test. If you do those kind of wrong things, then not only the people who praise for it, but even people who are also helping you in front, or who is also praying with you in front, it won't benefit both of them. When we make a repentance, or when you pray, it is in order to do something, in order to repent something that we have done wrong. And also, when you are praying, if you ask which prayer is good, you need to know what does it mean by good. You need to be sincere in your prayers, and if you want to go for happiness, that's right. But instead, when you're praying, if you want some good result or if you want benefits from something, then the prayer becomes that of the evil. So some people also said, when I said this, some people also said, but in reality, in order to survive, and so I told the people, I told the person that if you want to survive, then maybe it's better to dig the hole in the soil for a monk. As with Buddha, when he was begging, he if the monastery is not beneficial to other people, and then he asked people to demolish the temple soon. Nowadays, imagine if we go out to beg food nowadays, then how many people would we have who donate the food? If there is no benefit when we contribute, it doesn't help. And so, it's a very strong it's a very strong statement, which is also that you should go and beg for food every day. That is also a very scary saying. It's more than just scary, and it is not only to and also it also means that if you're not beneficial to other sentient beings, then you don't even have the right to eat food, or the true meaning behind it is very scary. If you do anything wrong, even to the slightest, then you're not someone who has even a little bit of a background to stay here. So the mind has to change often. And studying the mind changing, we say that is having the insight. In order not to do wrong things, Just because you are giving yourself score, do not give too much. And if you give too less, then you could suffer depression. When you think that you have less than 10, then you could fall into depression. And if you believe that you are doing very well and without any self-retrospection, if you give above 90, then that's also a problem. Don't ask your husband to give you score for the food that you have prepared, but instead, if you give yourself score, and if you say you're about 99%, you're about 99 in your score, then you should go to mental hospital. And also, those of you who believe that you're less than 10 should also go to mental hospital. You should be very cool with your score. Well, I do cook, but I don't know how to make it tasty, so I put a lot of spices. And that too, I pretend that I don't put like MSGs. I hide it somewhere which is not easy to find, but well, I tried not to put, but if it's not tasty, I put something to make it taste better. Well, didn't I say this before? Well, our grandmother, when she was selling, people were lining up to eat, and they were trying to learn the secret remedies. And no matter how much they tried it, it didn't taste the same. And so, and when people asked her for the secret recipe, she didn't teach them. She said it doesn't really make much difference. And she opened a utensil and said, "You just have to put this." And that was the seasoning. And if you just minus about like 5 of the 5 for the seasoning, and if you're about 95, then you should also go to hospital. Well, the seasoning, it should be about 80. You need to have the self-retrospection. You need to look at yourself and you need to know. But it is not something that you require while looking at external forces, but you are evaluating yourself. And when you are evaluating yourself, you know about all your excuses. And if you get too used to your beliefs and your behaviors, so if you don't do it properly, then you could easily fall into your own misunderstanding. You could believe that you're also a good person. Are you good? Are you good? Well, why are you laughing after you have answered? Are you good? Those of you who answer that you're good, since I am a doctor at the psychological, since I'm a psychologist today, you should get some treatment. Well, this is not a simple problem. If you look at it, then even if when you ask your husband, you can know easily. If you do relative evaluation, although you say you are good and you're good to your husband, then your husband will say it is not true, and your children generally answer that the most scary person in this world is mother. Because mother controls everything. If you don't listen to mother, you cannot get food. Even good, if you don't listen to mother, you cannot get it. And they can also sleep only if their mother tells them. And when they ask you to study, and if they don't study, the person that they have most problem is the mother. So, and also they don't want to go to school, but their mother drops them at school, so it's inevitable for them to go to school too. Well, that's the right thing. It's scary. every onset. So as they grow older, because the hormones change,
다 그렇대요. 나이 들면서 호르몬이 서로 바뀌기 때문에 여성
in a jungle,
아니 그게 밀림에서요.
the thing that scares the most is the role of the male lion.
사자 수사자 울음소. 저음인데 뭐 그런 하고 울면 다들 그냥 그 여자가
Well, they say, oh, if your female hormones stops being produced, and then you also sound like a male, like a role of the lion. Have you eaten? And then you would answer, and also your husband. And so the more you age, well, there are grandfathers who yell. That's in order to have the priority or some more plus points in the household.
하지만은 실제로는 겁이 나는 거야 그게.
And also, a mother knows how to cook, and she also knows how to control money. And so, if she starts cooking, then
곰탕을 갖다 한 달치를 끓이기 시작하면 겁을 확 먹어.
and so if she starts cooking some soup worth for a week, then the grandfather would generally think they would give up. Imagine where would she go?
그렇게 하다 잘 영감님이
Where sometimes they use a really proper method, because the wife has made sure the husband doesn't know how to cook his life. So under the pretense that they're nice to the husband, when they age, they don't even know how to cook.
이제 늙으면 노인네들이 할아버지들이 밥을
Well, in the seaweed soup, they try to season with soy sauce.
그걸 집어넣는까지
But the father was like, he was on TV, and he said, the seaweed was so weird. I put only a little bit, but it bloated so much. And with the bloated seaweed, he cooked more than 10 days, and it took him an hour to find the soy sauce.
가지고 해가지고
But in reality,
샀는데 1시간이 걸렸다. 여기 나 여러분
there's no image of soy sauce in the memory. So even if they see it with your eyes, they would just pass through. But then he actually found that it was just in front of his eyes, but he was not able to find it. So he spent 1 hour looking for the soy sauce, but the seaweed was already dried up. So he had to put again. And since he doesn't know which is where, so he has some problem. And also when he opened the pressure cooker, where the pressure cooker is also very simple. It will work on its own, and it will say it's done. They only have to open and eat, but because he doesn't know how it operates, so he wondered what he has to press. And also, since the eyesight is poor, he would switch on the light, switch it off, and he would know. So normally, when someone doesn't cook for the grandfathers, they would die sooner.
영감님들이 어디가 누가 밥을
Where the grandmothers, they don't want to cook because they feel lazy. 40 years, 50 years, they know about this so well. Even with small lettuce, they would prepare food. And if they don't want to eat, they can go to the next household and eat together. But a grandfather, they cannot even go out to eat together because they've never done that before.
사람들은 같이 밥 먹으러도 못 가. 일주로 같이
So in reality, even when they only see you cooking some soup, they get scary. And even if you go to daughter's house, they feel very scary. And especially when they have child or when they're giving birth, it's more scary because they will not return for a month. And sometimes, with a little courage, they will say, okay, go, I will cook myself. But in fact, they all buy. They don't even know how to cook.
내가 다 먹을게.
And most of the side dish that you have prepared and kept in the fridge, it's there almost, it's all there after a month, and so they're very scared of wife disappearing. And when they age, they're so busy flattering the wives, and they say, "Next life, let's meet again." But I don't think they're going to meet again next life. And the wife would say, well, for a husband, it is a problem. So they try to, and so they try to flatter the wife and say, you are the only one who exists in this world, and I will again meet you next life. But that's because of their real problem in their reality. If they can only eat, and if they have no problem in laundry, then your husband would not be on his knees.
절대 영감이 그렇게 안 숙인다니까. 예?
Well, that person was courage to say.
그 사람은 그래도 용기 있는 사람이에요.
So as you age, the opinion of women becomes louder. Naturally, it's bound to happen, and the voice of the male it loses its strength, and also becomes lower. And if the wife asks what's going on, then the men, even if they're a bit angry, they have to hold within themselves.
성질이 좀 낮더라도 참을 수밖에 없어요.
Well, you feel sorry as they grow older, so be nice to your husband. With a great compassion, please forgive your husband, although they pretend like everything's okay and all that thing. But from my opinion, if when they don't go out to earn money, well, in reality, they don't really know anything.
돈 벌러 안 나갔을 때는
And actually, that's also a problem.
그게 사실은
So, practice is very important, and the essence of the practice is starting from my heart. We change it to something better, something more virtuous, and then later our greediness would just wither away, and a person who is greedy or whose greediness doesn't stop, we don't even call that person as a person. And the person without greediness, we call them a true person. We call Buddha a true person, that they have become really human. Without that, they are not really human, and they're full of greediness. And although they have the human body, but inside they're living like animals. Every day they chase after delicious food, and they're greedy, and they have competition for survival, and they also have conflicts with others, and that's how they live. So again and again, listen to teachings, pray at home, and do your own practice. You need to have the right target or the goal. The goal should not be foggy. And Tokyo Monastery, well, it's been very clear. A lot of wrong things has been purified in Seokja Monastery. So even if you don't do wrong things, everyone who is living here, if everyone is living poor life, well, living a poor life, well, it's a very it's a very mysterious thing. But the poorer you are while living, you have light emitting. So even if you're very skinny because you're so poor, they will think that you're actually going through your practice. So in reality, even if you're very skinny by nature, normally the people in the common world would think, why is that person so skinny? But in Buddhism, we could also say the person is going through so much practice. So lay people in the business world, if they don't have a good car, then other people look down on him because of his credit standard. But For a monk, if you don't have a car, then it's even better.
좋아.
And also,
그 경제 원리하고는 맞지 않아요.
and also,
그뭐 종교인 과세한다고
when they tax the monks, and
세금을 좀 내서
well, I would like to pay tax, but I don't have anything to pay tax.
수입이 있는 깨뜨기라고 내 개인주의가 있어.
By taxing religious people itself, we should all be ashamed. All the religious people should be ashamed, because we do business that makes money. Such kind of conversation arises, because they have so far only done business making money. Even such kind of discussion has arisen. If they have lived their life for contributing to others, then nothing of such discussion would arise. We should know how to be ashamed. We live our life in the way that even the parliament, members of parliament, can put out legs. We should not live our life like that. Well, we opened our book, and then we have to do it with the book open.
책을 폈잖아요, 그죠?
The above
책 펴놓고
statement, well, there is something that makes me happy nowadays.
위에 구절은 무화를 나 요즘에 기분이 좋아.
In Yosu, they say they cannot really have a result in Yosu. Well, even if everyone goes out, it's okay.
다 나가도 괜찮아. 그 리조트는
In the resort, they were building casino inside. Well, that's a gambling place, isn't it? And when I opposed it, saying it's a gambling place,
그 노름방인데 안 되는데 그래.
and also in Yosu, we need to live our life a little more humbly.
매니 많은데 말이야. 무슨 노름
And I said we cannot accept gambling in our place. Well, they say it's for the foreigners.
망한다고 내가 그랬어요.
Well, how are we going to live well if we make foreigners suffer?
같이 외국놈들 망하게 만들어.
But they still said we also need to survive. Well, that's something that we have heard before quite often. I heard that statement somewhere.
내가 어디서 들었어? 내뼈 온다고 그
About the ticketing, when they asked a monk, the monk answered that they also need to survive. In our consciousness, although it is people from other nationality, if we all share our relations. For example, for us to live well, if we cheat a million people, what productivity can it produce, and also how good will our life be? And if a million people lose their money to our country, and if they leave our country, then
돈을 뺏기고 이거 가지고 해서 돈을
then 1 million Chinese people
100만 명이
would resent our country. And when they benchmark at Las Vegas,
벤치마킹
and they say Las Vegas is like a city of fantasy. Well, wait for a few years. The place would become the place is like a entertainment district. But so even if we do something or try to do our business, we also have to think about the karma that we're going to get back. So even if after it's like 10 years, 20 years,
이게 우리가 정말
we have to think about making or building a business that doesn't harm others, and good people should live. And even only if good people live, even when you raise our children, we should be proud of ourselves.
큰 왕대밭에 왕대가 나고 그러는 거지.
Well, in the forest full with an oak tree, you cannot have bamboos. You understand what I mean?
알겠죠?
All bamboos die.
참나무 숲에서는 대나무가 안 큰다고.
So whatever it is, I think it's a fortunate thing in Yosu. I heard that there are people who are very sad about it, but I don't think it is something that we need to be sad about it. I was going somewhere and it's written there that let's smoke Yosu cigarette, and I made a call right away. You should say let people don't smoke and let's be healthy. It's okay even if we don't get tax from my citizens. Then they will think that the mayor is a nice person, isn't it? The above line explains about understanding of voidness. The wisdom of understanding voidness is actually the state that you have recognized the voidness, the absence of I, and this does not mean that you have no more misunderstanding of Atman. For example, our mind takes physical forms just like other objects. There is no eternity and there is no form, and there is also no property of theirs that doesn't change. Not only this problem, but when you are looking at an object, we are looking at the object as if they exist in reality. So, because we live for such short span of time, we could also believe that Earth is eternal, but Earth is not eternal. That's only because it's longer than our lifespan, but it is for us. We live for like 100 years at the maximum, but Earth exists about like millions and billions of years. So if you look at it in the long term, then you could believe that it is really long. And even when you are looking at the mountain, where there is a line. How can the mountain be the same? A mountain never stays the same. Even if it rains, there will be holes in the mountain. In the mountain, the trees grow and falls down too. It goes through many changes all the time. If we write the poetry again, as per Buddhist saying, well, the mountains are changing, the forest is changing, but human change sooner. So it's having the illusion that the object is eternal, but there's nothing in this world there's nothing in this world that could be eternal. The object that you have your own attachment while you look at them, if you think that they cannot exist forever, then you also have a desire or feeling that you wish they would last forever. That we call obsession or affection. That is something that doesn't happen, and you again develop your own suffering. This is a serious problem. When we say the object does not really exist, it actually means that if there is no property and if there is nothing that exists eternally, then it's just like a voidness. It's just like a shadow. In the Diamond Sutra, it's written that it feels like it's in dream, and it's like a water bubble. It is so in reality. There is nothing that is eternal. There is nothing that is eternal. So when you see that when you see yourself attached to something, you have to fear that it's not eternal. But when you look at objects, we still hope that there's something that doesn't change. Well, for a human, we have atmans, we have soul. And nowadays, some people just say that everything in this world has its life. So even trees, they have life. Well, they have life, but they don't have uh, uh, they don't have their own thoughts. But then they also say the trees, they also have their own soul, and so if you sing for them, then they grow better. But that's not true. They don't have spirits, and those things are humans' illusions or misunderstandings.
사람이 착각하는 소리들이야.
The animals which have spirits or souls, well, normally most of animals, they have spirits or soul. It's just a matter of uh, how serious or it just depends on it. The matter is it varies, but they still have them. But plants, they have cells, but in other words, stones or like a soil, which is not living organism, they don't have them. But nowadays, you say even in trees and even in stones, they have spirits and souls. And there are also some people who talk of them as if it's Buddhism. Those books written by Westerners, that's not true. In Buddhism, it's been clearly distinguished and identified. If there is a living, if there is a living, if a soil is a living organism, then why are we stepping on the soil? Do you think it's okay to step on the head of some living organism? Well, some people also comment on something that is against the logic. Also, we also have the mind that intakes the original nature, which is there's also the mind that intakes its original property, that there is no original nature in them. We also intake them, and but also there are also the mind which doesn't which is not true.
그런 마음도 있다. 알을 존중하여 분별하는 것을
On top of that,
그렇게 해서 이제
sometimes we don't even distinguish this. We don't even distinguish the property, and we just intake the property, the state which is not distinguished. Therefore, demonstrating the Atman properly and understanding and discriminating them, and we call them analytic wisdom. And we have to go through the proper logic or understanding of Atman. Then only we can understand the absence of self. Although we talk in a scientific way,
우리가 이제 보통 과학적으로 얘기하더라도 아주 미립자나 이런 것을 양자역학으로
here we have to go through the proper analytic understanding. Then only we can understand the voidness, and
자체 성질을 갖고 있는 것이 없고 나중에 해보니까
only if we study all the particles and if we have a proper understanding of them, we can say that this is void or this is something or that. But without understanding them, if we say something that it doesn't really make sense, and we have to understand them properly, then only we can understand the voidness properly. And if we don't have the sense of discrimination, then even if we use the same words, how they use them has all different meanings.
그 사람이 사용하는 단어 자체가 다른 뜻이야. 다른 뜻이야. 전에 누가 와서 그러더라고요. 스님.
Where once someone came and asked, is it different? Is it different to when you are drunk and when you are sober? and the voidness is different. And so I told that person, if you wake up, then you'll feel the difference. Even those people who say they have experienced God,
우리가 신을 체험했다 뭐 이런 사람들 얘기 어떤 체험을 통해서 갑자기
and there are also some people who say
그것이 신을 체험한 것이건 무엇인가
they have experienced the wisdom of non-discrimination, and
일종의 마약 성분이 있는 것을 갖다
and there are also some people who take drugs and feel
지금도 서양
a different status. But if they ask what's different between them, well, if you are drugged and the state that you are going through is different, it will not last. And even there is also a chance of people getting damaged from it. Even this time, the saying of the Rinpoche is also correct.
림포체 스님께서 하신 말씀도 옳은 얘기다. 방과 하를 할때 이를테면 득산 방하고
when the time or when everything is right,
순간적으로 번뇌가 다 흩어지잖아요.
then the
다른 생각이 없죠, 그죠?
afflictions or pain, it disappears at a certain moment. It doesn't last. It doesn't continue.
순간이지 지속이 안 된단 말이에요.
Because it doesn't continue, when you're using that method, you have to use it
이게 지속이 안 되기 때문에 그 방법을
at the time when it is so deep and when you are so deep into it, and if you just have to hit the skin of it, and if it causes the effect, then you have to use it. And those of you who are not in the state, you have to use different methods to pull up your level up to that level, and that is the actual study.
수준까지 끌어올리는 것이
You understand? Then that boundary, if that disappears, and
아시겠죠? 그러면 그 경계가 번뇌가 사라져서
and the instant where the agony disappears,
사라지는 뭐 1초 정도 탁 사라지는 그 순간
something that is similar to it, it lasts forever through all our lives.
평생을
You understand?
알겠죠?
And
그걸 갖다가 이제 부동지라 그래요. 그게
we call that the eight immovable or unshakable stage or land of Bodhisattva. And we say trust in that is believing in Buddhism. It's not that you believe in the statues.
그걸 믿는 것을 불교로 믿는다 그러고. 불상을 믿는 게 아니에요.
Believing in Buddha's teachings and logics. It means we are believing in what's beneath it,
그게 맞다.
or what's the meaning behind it. But we don't talk about something that is externally present.
아무것도 아니고 이런 식으로 얘기하지는 않는단 말이야.
You understand? So, Venerable Yukjo, when he was about to die,
저 뭐야 육조 스님이 죽으려 그러니까 돌아가시려고
there were people crying, and he got up and screamed. And a person who was dying got up and screamed, and everyone was so surprised. And he asked, "Do you know?" But they didn't know.
알겠는가? 몰라.
Didn't you see me entering into another world?
그를 열어 보이는 걸 못 받는가?
So now, when we study, well, these are not. We're not asking you to study them as your responsibility. So, and also whether you study or not, it doesn't really make any difference to me. It is only something of your fate. Also, whether you accumulate your fortunes or not, that's also not related to me. That is for your own good, your next life. If you ask if next life really exists, well, it seems like you live your life believing that there's also no tomorrow. Well, truth and reality is very simple. We only complicate it by not trusting it and also doing things out of our own will.
뜻대로 흐는 거로 복잡해져 버리지.
Where they are mere methods.
이제 우리는 자꾸 방편력 때문에 이제 우리 방편력이 부처님 방편력에 뭐
And also, it is one out of many millions. That's why it's very weak.
쳤던 당신 그 인연이
But Buddha enables us to enter into the path of our own practice. But despite that, if he asks you to study, if he even push you,
여수에서는 공부하라고
it's almost like a dough. If we hold it too tight, then we lose it in our grasp. But if we don't do it tightly, then it doesn't really work out well.
조금 세게 지면 요새로 씩 삐져나오잖아요.
Well, because you don't know that because of the strength of your karma, you're not able to study. But
세속적인데 너무
and also in your life, in your everyday life, don't hold on to it too much. Just let it be enough to the state that is enough for you to eat and survive. The time is going to fly off very soon. Even now, you all have snows on your head,
지금도 청년 다 왔잖아.
and you're going to face the next stage very soon. Well, we say it's the first snow when you have only few strands of white hair, but after some time, the snow doesn't melt, and so you dye your hair, and those and the white ones which doesn't go off with your hair dye, they're like snows that fell a long time ago. It's not like a frost on your hair, but it's been quite long since you had your own snow. So just like that, our life.
그러니까 그렇게
Well, we have already done this and that. You even got married. And you also had children. You also ate a lot of delicious things. So there's only one thing left for us.
애도 낳아봤죠. 맛있는 것도 먹어봤죠.
It's only for the only path left for you is to go, and while you go, you have to go well, isn't it? You need to go well to come back well. It should be you went well and you came back well, but when you leave, you don't want to go, and so you try your best not to go. And when you come back, you don't even know where you came from or where you came by. It shouldn't be so, isn't it? Well, the saying is really good. It's like 타다가타.
참 말이 좋아.
You know well that you came, and at the time of your departure, you try. You don't even resist.
안 빠둥거리고 탁
And when you go, at the time of your death, there's nothing like
아미타 부처님이시여 다음 생에 나를 갖다가 극락으로 인도하소 그 소리 없어. 왜?
nothing like your resistance here. Why is it so? Because Buddha,
사라졌기 때문에
like in Tathagata, there's no resistance at all.
바람이 요만큼
And
뭔 의지하는 게
when we say you're dependent on something, there need to be something that you need to depend on. If you're not expecting anything from your husband, then you wouldn't be depending on your husband. But if you say, if you don't rely on anything, and instead if you want him to just do some put nails on the wall, then you also rely on him for the nail, and then later you say, at the time of your death, you fear that you would only survive only if you have him beside you, even if he's very old. And even when you feel that, I wish I could have son, but that's also because you want to rely on your son at the time when you age. But the sons nowadays, they don't do that. Well, forget about your son. The daughter-in-law nowadays, do you think they do that? Oh, well, if your daughter-in-law does that, then the mother-in-law is very fortunate to have such daughter-in-law. If your daughter-in-law is as good as your as good as you expect, and if they also take good care of you, then then your daughter-in-law should be your daughter in your previous life that you took very good care of. So in Tathagata, there is no place of any dependence. So when we say we have also attained
일체 의지하는 그림자가 하나도 없다는 것이야.
when we have attained the Buddha's wisdom, that means we have also no place where we depend on.
뭐 독단적으로 고집을 피우고 산다는 게 아니라
In our desire,
서로 의지해서 존재하는 이것만 있지. 내가 욕망적으로
there is no place. If we say we have already attained this all wisdom, Buddha's wisdom, that also means you just depend on nature. That's one thing. But at the boundary of Buddha, you do not depend on anything out of your desire. So in olden times,
그래서 옛날 아라한가를
just like the son of the rhinoceros, you have to go alone.
무소의 뿔처럼
They have already gotten rid of their greediness or your agonies. And what are you scared of and what are you depending on? They don't even depend on their body.
몸도 오질 않아.
So a person like Mongmyeon, even if he was beaten to death,
맞아 죽으면서도 그대로 그
he didn't try to survive because he felt bad for his body dying.
가까워서 내가 살아나오려고 해보질 않았단 말이야.
And that's Dharma, and that's the teachings of Buddhism.
이게 도야.
When we say Buddha has attained the whole knowledge, it refers to that, whether philosophical or academic or religious or God,
하나도
whichever teaching it is, whether it's money,
신이건 사람
they don't live their life depending on any of those sources. There is no dependence on them.
거기 의존하는 것이 없어.
When we depend on Buddha, well, we are depending on the teaching because we are not at the level of Buddha. If we have attained the level, then there is no need for us to depend on him. You understand? So the path that I take is alone.
그래서 내가 가는 길은 나 혼자란 말이야.
Although we live in the form of dependent arising because we depend on each other,
의지해서 연기의 모습으로 살지만은
but all the paths that we take, it's essentially only me.
모든 핵심적인 부분은 그냥 나라고. 그냥 나의 뜻이 없어.
So, well, even if it's difficult to practice because you don't, it's not habitual, but you should try to study. And while you study, as your study becomes stronger or deeper,
한 사람 한 사람들이 자꾸 공부가 깊어지면서
you have to be the role model for many people. And also for many people, while living, they could also see that, well, they lived a really good life. Well, I spoke about Bojogoksa quite often. At the time of his death, he made about 700 people to sit and he answered all the questions that they asked. And at the time of his death, he asked, "Oh, so you have no more questions?" And he just leaned to his back and he passed away. And those 700 audience who were sitting in front, they were amazed. even at the time that Amitabha went or Buddha passed away,
저렇구나. 열애께서 가실 때도 부처님께서 가실 때도 일체 선신들이 나를
since they are all looking at the death of Buddha, he showed it out
이 열애 열반이 있다는
proudly.
것을 갖다 당당하게 보여줬죠.
And practicing in that method in such a way, and then this world, I become purified, and also this world becomes purified, and that's the
이 세상의 정화가
that's the teaching of Buddhism. So if you do your own practice, then for your families,
그래서 여러분이 정진을
and if you start talking the good things or the right things about teachings,
맞는
oh, well, in 80s when I was in Seoul, the professor Lee,
서울에 있으면서 서울대학의
when he was talking about the trade treaty,
그 다자간 무역 협정에 관한 것을 얘기하시면
it's
그 미국
the rice that they produce in America, in California, it's like 1/6 of the price, but it's way better quality than us, and so they can have no competition for it. And at the time, he said about 30 years later this would enter our country, but at the time we were so fooled by our government.
하도 우리는 정권에 쏘아가지고 번식 분식 장려한 거 있죠, 그죠? 네?
And at the time, they also check what's in the lunchbox, and they even check if you have beans mixed. So I asked, amongst the barleys and beans and rice, I asked which has the most nutrition of.
영양가가 어떤 게 제일 높습니까? 그러니까 번식 분식이 정말 맞습니까? 혓바닥이 잘합니다.
Where
대답이 간단해.
for rice it's easy to digest, but if it's only beans you cannot eat. But if it's only rice, then it's very tasty and you can eat very well, and it's also very nutritious.
한 가지만 삶아놔도 한 가지 삶아도 더 맛있어 그게. 그 영양
Then why is the government doing so? That's because we don't have food.
그거 왜 정부 중요한 게 없으니까.
They said more than wheat, rice has more nutrition, and even compared to barley, it has way more nutrition, also proteins.
뭐 콩보다도
And the person answered that your tongue would know very well. And also when you bite rice, when you eat rice, you can just swallow it. So in olden times, it's rice, white rice, and seaweed soup. The teachings of Buddha, just like white rice with seaweed soup, if you do practice in reality, and while practicing,
정진을 하고
not the fake ones, but while you're doing your teaching, if you start to talk about the teaching to your family and your husbands, then they will start making difference. While you don't do that, but if you only complain about it or talk about it,
실은
where someone say, oh, they don't really listen. And when I ask, what are you doing? Then that person answered that while the person wants to be a vegetarian, he doesn't give anything to the husband. Then the husband comes and gets angry while he's eating his food. And he says, why don't you eat alone? I cannot eat this. And although I tell him that it's good for his body, well, if you are only being vegetarian, it is not good for your health.
채식만 하면
From the vegetarian, it's difficult to build our muscles, and so we could lose a lot of muscles, and it's not good for muscle building, and so if you age, then it's going to be fatal to your body. And all the time, assuming that is teachings of Buddha, they don't even know, and still they talk about they are persistent that it's a Buddhism, and so the husband gets angry and doesn't want to be a Buddhist. Because he's angry, he doesn't want to be a Buddhist. What is Buddhism in that way? Buddhism is not so. And so when the children made an observation, my mother goes to monasteries, but she prayed the whole night. And when she came back home, she said, I have done all the prayer for your own good. But then when children thought about it logically, children, they learn maths. And mothers, if they didn't go to schools properly, and also if they're very emotional, although they went to school, they were not good at maths. And since they cannot do proper calculation, but children, they're good with their calculation. And they're like, well, I'm the one who is studying, and it's not even in the study of the lawyers, but I am the one who is studying. But if you pray to Buddha, what difference does it make? But if you pray well to Buddha and if your score goes up, then it causes confusion to national problem, and also with the problem that has caused, you have to sue Buddha, isn't it? So it's similar to that. Then and also those who didn't pray like that, if your score went down, then and if the score has been reduced because you didn't pray to Buddha, or if it happened the other way, then that is also not proper. It's like a bribery. Why are you making Buddha look like he's taking bribes? That's because his disciples are not proper. If you don't believe in God, you go to hell. Then what happened before we had Christianity? From the Tangun, all the people who lived from Tangun era, everyone would have gone to hell, isn't it? If you talk like that, then maybe it could have been better if we didn't have Christianity at all in our country. Then people would not go to hell. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? It's the same phenomenon. When you had the final test, and if your score got increased, then Buddha is against the rule of attorney, and also he's having problem with bribery, and also he's suffering from obstruction of enforcing law. Why is he disturbing country from enforcing its law? You have to study properly, and with the scores that you get, you have to get fair scores, and you have to improve yourself. And also, if I am the judge, then I would give him 7 years. Well, I would give him about 7 years. All over Korea, you are humiliating the face of Buddha. So even those one thing, we have to follow Buddha's teachings. Even that, even if it's in the teachings of Buddha, if we know that they were wrong, and if this was done if that was done in order to consult people, then we have to do that. But we have to analyze that way, that it was just used as a method to consult people. But even such things are not there in the teachings of Buddha. If we say I have a test, then there's the answer already. Study hard, and then if they ask you how should I study hard, and then there's the answer too. If you do like this, it's good. But my mother, for 100 days, she washed her hair in cold water, and she prostrated until her knees would break, and also she built two pillars in the main temple. And to the monk, she also gave him a robe. Well, in Hunguk monastery, my monk robe disappeared, and I almost froze myself to death. And when the winter went off, I got new clothes. And when I asked, why did you bring me this? And the person was like, I'm really sorry, I have your robe. And I asked why. And the person said, I asked someone, and they said, I need to have the monk robe hanging in the wall, then I would get grandson. And when I asked, do you have son? She said, yes, I got son. And so they got me a new monk robe. And such funny or ridiculous things happen. Isn't that really ridiculous? Even comedy, it's even at a higher level than the 개콘. When you saw 개콘, they also have something about 고집불통, about stubborn program, and they talk with the security. And below that, and there's also a stubborn grandfather who would yell, and they would just mumble themselves. We have to look at the world in a realistic view, with a realistic view, and then and there are something that we can easily feel and experience that those kinds of things are not true. And from there, if you ask what are the things that could cut down your karma, and while you do your repentance, if you're going to face karma because of your this behavior, then you should stop it. And if you don't repent, what is the true repentance? That is not doing it. Well, it's even simpler if you don't pray and if you don't repent. Well, when you're not drinking, and then there's no need for you to when you're not drinking, there's no need for you to pray for 100 days saying that I'm not going to drink. If you don't drink, then that's the end. Well, I applied lipstick very darkly. I'm really sorry. Well, I'm not saying lipstick is a sin, but then, for example, it's easier if you don't apply lipstick. For example, if you say, I'm not going to perm my hair the whole time, and if you also pray like that, then there's no need to pray like that. But then if you don't just do it, then it's the end. So it is the center in the heart. So if you just cut them off from your behavior and also from other things, then the whole karma or whole the vicious circle that ends. You understand? And while living like that, if you stop and if you believe that you're going to live your life in a better way, then that's even better. The thing that you have lived so far, if you were greedy and if you only knew about your religion, and if you're not going to live your life like that, but if you're going to live your life with no selfishness and with others' happiness as your own, if you're going to live like that, I will never strive for happiness through others' suffering. If you are going to live like that, then the person is already a bodhisattva and a true person. Prior to that, prior to the stage, the person is like a pig or like a dog.
시청법회는 그렇게 하니까 좋죠. 네?
When you listen to the teachings of City Hall, isn't it good? Uh, it's that's the method. So I think it's good. So I ask everyone to come and listen. I'm not asking you to pay, and I'm also not asking you to buy anything like 유병헌.
내가 유병현처럼
The only thing I'm asking you to do is study.
그런 거 없잖아.
And also and at the maximum like buy a computer in Nepal, well, that I haven't yet started asking, but others I don't ask you to do anything. I don't ask you to, I have no intention to say, and also I don't do those things. When I cheat that person, there's the person is someone I'm going to meet next life, and if I cheat that person, if I lie to that person, then how can I see that person again? It's very comfortable that I still have a little strength, and before I age a little more, I can help the person a little more, and at the maximum I can help them is giving them teaching.
도와줄 수 있는
Other
제일
than
도와줄 수
that,
있는 게 뭐냐? 내가 법문해 줘.
it's not like I have money. I have money as much as
돈이
those rich people, and also, well, I heard that Jesus was not so, but it's the wrong belief of Christians,
기독교인들이 잘못해서
and so Jesus did not make stone into a bread, and
통해가 갈라지고
it's not like the Yosu Coast, Yosu Sea broke into half, separated into half, and everyone collected fish from it. Well, when something happens, or when something happens in mountain, the first thing that people normally say is, let's go to pick a few things. Well, I don't have such abilities too, and even to you, well, some people said,
그런 능력도 없고 또 여러분에게
if I hit the wooden gong well and if I pray hard, then I can achieve everything. And what can we achieve? They listen to one wish, or then I ask, isn't it okay if you listen to two? Why only one? They could have listened to two or three or more.
왜 짜잘하게 한 가지만 들어줘요? 두 가지 세 가지 다 들어주지.
I don't have those things. So if by little, if this benefits them a little, when I say benefit, not in the financial terms, but if it helps a person to become less sad or less, if it gives them less suffering, that's what I do.
하는 일들이지. 나는
But
지금에 있어서
for my own selfishness or my greediness, I'm not doing it. It's not even 0.0000001%. And maybe those who doesn't study and but keep saying wrong things a lot of time, sometimes I have a little hatred to them.
미운 생각 확 일어나려고.
If they only make comments verbally, then sometimes I fear that I need to scold them a little.
그러면 이제
And also, after 5 to 10 years, if there's no change or no improvement, and if the person only comes and goes like a stone in the clock, then I also have few doubts. What makes me happy is two things.
제일 기쁜 것은
If you study hard, then you start making difference from your own.
열심히 하면 조금 변화.
And since you change, your speech and your behavior also changes.
생각의 변화 일어서 말하는 거 변화 이러고.
And then I feel I'm grateful to them. And if there's a slightest difference, and if you try to do something for others, then I also feel that it is good.
볼라 그러면 그래, 참 됐다.
And when I believe that the person is making Buddha's land on his own, then I also feel grateful about it. There is nothing more other than this. Where time has passed quite a lot. We haven't even done even a page. We haven't done even a paragraph.
뭐야 한 페이지도 못했잖아. 한 단도 못했네.
On 4th from Gyeongju,
저 4일 날 우리 저 경주에서 장기
Seems like
세미나 이제
the seminar is at the last.
역경
And maybe there could be
마지막인가
some small
나중에
conference
한 부분
conferences there, but this is international conference.
를 할지는 몰라도 이거는 이제
So all of you,
국제세미나거든요. 그래서 이제
is it better if you go on third or fourth? If you go on fourth, you have to
여러분께서
leave early.
3일 날 가는 게 좋아요. 4일 날 가는 게 4일 날 가면 조금 일찍 출발해야 되는데